All right, let's talk about gluten. You hear that word everywhere, right? But it's surrounded by so much confusion. Is it the bad guy in our diet? Is it totally harmless? Or is it somewhere in the middle? Today, we're going to cut through all that noise and get the real story. I mean, you can't miss them, can you? Walk down literally any aisle in the grocery store and there it is, that gluten-free label. It's on bread, cookies, pasta. Sure, but also on stuff you'd never expect, like salad dressing or even ice cream. The whole gluten-free thing has just exploded. And that's the big question, isn't it? When you see so many people jumping on the bandwagon, it's really easy to think, hey, maybe going gluten-free is just healthier for everyone. But, the actual science tells a much more complicated story. So before we get into all the debate and the drama, let's just start with the basics. What even is this stuff? Turns out, gluten is kind of like a secret ingredient, the unsung hero behind a lot of the foods we absolutely love. Okay, so viscoelastic is a fancy word, but the idea is super simple. Gluten is basically a protein that you find in grains like wheat, barley, and rye, and its name actually comes from the Latin word for glue, which is just a perfect description. When you mix flour with water, these proteins link up and form this amazing, stretchy, sticky web. And that web, it's what makes all the magic happen. It traps the little gas bubbles from yeast, which is what helps bread rise and get all fluffy and light. It's the reason a good pizza crust or a bagel has that perfect, satisfying chew. Honestly, without gluten, a lot of our favorite baked goods would just be dense, crumbly bricks. It's a culinary workhorse for sure. But for all the wonderful things it does in the kitchen, that exact same protein can be a huge problem for some people. And for them, avoiding gluten isn't a fad or a choice, it's a medical necessity that triggers some really serious issues. Yeah, and we're not just talking about a little indigestion here. For people with a genuine gluten-related disorder, their body basically sees gluten as an invader. It can cause inflammation, or in the most serious cases, it can actually trick the body into attacking itself. So this is the official lineup of conditions where gluten is the known culprit. Now, you've probably heard of the big three: celiac, sensitivity, and wheat allergy. But the list is actually longer, including some less common but still very serious conditions that can affect the brain, like gluten ataxia, or the skin, like dermatitis herpetiformis. Okay, this right here is where so much of the confusion comes from. A lot of the symptoms can overlap and seem really similar, but what's actually happening inside your body is totally different for each one. So let's clear this up once and for all. So here is the single most important thing to understand. With celiac disease, eating gluten triggers your immune system to literally attack and cause physical damage to the lining of your intestine. But with non-celiac gluten sensitivity, or NCGS, you can feel just as awful, sometimes even worse, but there is no physical damage happening to your gut. Let's just quickly break this down. Celiac disease is an autoimmune disorder. A wheat allergy is a classic fast-acting allergic reaction. Think hives, trouble breathing, and then there's non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which causes very real symptoms like brain fog and fatigue, but without the intestinal damage of celiac or that allergic response. So you've got three totally different things going on. So just how common are these things? Well, celiac disease affects maybe 1 to 2% of people, and a real wheat allergy, that's even more rare, way down at about 0.2%. But non-celiac gluten sensitivity, that's a whole different ballgame. Some estimates say it could affect as many as 13% of people, which makes it way, way more common than the other two. But wait, even that 13% doesn't explain what's happening in the grocery stores. Because when you ask people if they're trying to eat gluten-free, you get this number, up to 30%. And that's a huge gap, right? A massive difference between people who have a medical reason and people who are just choosing this diet. So what happens then? For the millions of people going gluten-free without an actual medical diagnosis, is this really a smart health move, or could it actually be backfiring? The medical world is pretty united on this. This quote really says it all. The clear consensus is that unless a doctor has confirmed you have a gluten-related disease, you shouldn't be using a gluten-free diet just to try and lose weight or for general wellness. And there's a good reason why. A lot of these specially made gluten-free products, well, they're not exactly nutritional powerhouses. To get a decent texture and taste without gluten, manufacturers often have to add in more fat, more sugar, and more calories. And at the same time, these products can be lower in fiber, protein, and really important things like B vitamins and iron. And on top of all that, there's the hit to your wallet.
I mean, it's no secret, gluten-free products are almost always more expensive than the regular versions, and that can add up to a real financial burden over time.
Okay, so after hearing all this, what's the right move if you suspect that gluten might be causing you issues? Well, the one thing you don't want to do is try to figure it out yourself by just changing what you buy at the grocery store. No, the right way is actually pretty simple. Step 1, go talk to a doctor. Just tell them what's going on. And step 2, and this is so important, get tested for celiac disease and a wheat allergy before you change a single thing about your diet. And here's why that is so critical. The tests for celiac disease work by looking for certain antibodies in your blood, but your body only makes those antibodies if it's being exposed to gluten. So if you cut out gluten before you get tested, the antibodies disappear, and you could get a false negative result. You'd never get the right diagnosis. And look, here's something that might give you some peace of mind. If you end up being diagnosed with non-celiac gluten sensitivity, it's natural to worry, oh no, does this mean I'm going to get celiac disease later? But experts like Dr. Rubio Tapia from the Cleveland Clinic are clear. The two are not connected at all. Having one does not mean you'll get the other. So the real bottom line here is about taking control. It doesn't matter if it's celiac, an allergy, or a sensitivity. Getting a clear professional diagnosis is the absolute most important first step. Once you know what you're dealing with, every single one of these conditions can be managed so you can start feeling better. And that kind of leaves us with one final big picture thought. The whole gluten story is a perfect example of a much bigger question we all face. In this world that's just swimming in wellness trends and clever marketing, how do we learn to separate genuine medical advice from all the hype?